Chapter 13, The Second Bomb. No one was in the kitchen of Shinhu's restaurant when the bomber set a tall can of monosodium glutamate behind similar cans on a shelf. That's also known as MSG, and it's basically salt and flavoring that they add to foods. The color-striped candle would burn down to the fuse at 6:30. Whoever was working there would be at the other end of the room. No one would be hurt. And here's a sign in the elevator. Due to the unfortunate damage to the coffee shop, Shinhu's restaurant is prepared to satisfy all dinner accommodations. Order down or ride up to the 5th floor. Treat your taste buds to a scrumptious meal while feasting your eyes on the stunning snowscape before it melts away. Reasonable prices, too. Grace Wexler tacked her sign to the elevator wall as she rode up to her new job. She was going to be the seating hostess. Where's the cook? Mr. Hu shouted, meaning his wife. He found Madame Hu in their rear 4th floor apartment, kneeling before her bamboo trunk, fingering mementos from her childhood in China. So she has all these knickknacks in her trunk that she's looking at. He hurried her back to the kitchen, too harried to find the words that would explain what was happening. Now, where was that lazy son of his? Doug jogged in from a tiring workout on the stairs. How was he supposed to know the restaurant would open early? Nobody bothered telling him. Some student you are. Anyone with the brain of an anteater could have figured that out. People are short of food. The coffee shop is closed for repairs. Stop arguing, go take a shower, and put on your busboy outfit. Get moving. Don't you think you're rather hard on the boy? Grace commented. Someone's got to give him a shove. If he had it his way, he'd do nothing but run. Hu replied between bites of chocolate. You're not so easy on Angela either. Angela? Angela was born good, the perfect child. As for the other one, well, it's not easy being a parent, Hu said woefully. You can say that again. Grace held her breath. Her husband would have done just that, said it again. But Mr. Hu only nodded and shared sympathy. What a gentleman. So you notice this relationship building between Angela and Mr. Hu, right? She holds him in high regard, which I don't know if any other character does. Only Mr. and Mrs. Theodorakis ordered down. The other tenants of Sunset Towers lined up at the reservations desk, waiting for Grace Winsler Wexler to lead the way. Oversized menus clutched in her arms, Grace felt the first proud stirrings of power rush up from her pedicured toes to the very top curl on her head. If Uncle Sam could pair off people, so could she. So Grace likes this power that she has, putting people at different tables. Oh, you see your brother every day, Chris. How about eating with someone else for a change? She wheeled the boy to a window table without waiting for an answer. It would have been yes. Two cripples together, Seidel Pulaski thought. She'd show that high and mighty hostess. She'd show them all. She and Chris could have private jokes too, and everybody would be sorry they weren't sitting with them. Okay, so the word cripple is not used anymore to describe people with some sort of disability or a broken arm or what have you, right? It just means your body is hurt in some way. But Seidel's thinking of herself as a cripple, which we know she is not. I guess maybe she is, because she makes it up. What's mugugapan? Chris asked, baffled by the strange words on the menu. I think it's boiled grasshopper. Seidel screwed up her face, and Chris laughed. Or chocolate-covered mousse. Fresh French-fried mouse, Chris offered. Now Seidel laughed. They both laughed heartily, but no one envied them. Well, your brother seems to be enjoying Miss Pulaski. Theo nodded. Oh, that's Angela's voice. Your brother seems to be enjoying Miss Pulaski. Theo nodded, awed by the beautiful Angela. 3 years older than him, so fair skin and blonde, so unattainable. And here he was, sitting at the very same table with her, just the two of them, and he couldn't think of a single thing to say that wasn't silly or childishly silly. So Theo gets to sit with Angela. And you can tell that he is a little bit intimidated by her. They're both, I think Angela's 19. Theo's like 18. Usually the quiet one, Angela tried again. Are you planning to go to college next year? Theo nodded, then shook his head. Say something, idiot. I got a scholarship to Madison, but I'm not going. I'm going to go to work instead. What big, worried, sky blue eyes. The operation for Chris will be very expensive. Now that was worse. She was feeling sorry for him. If Chris had been born that way, maybe it wouldn't have been so bad, but he was a perfectly normal kid, a great kid. And he's smart, too. About 4 years ago, he started to get clumsy. Just little things at first. Perhaps my fiancé can help. Angela bit her lip. Theo was not asking for charity. Ugh, and fiancé? What an old-fashioned, silly word. I went to college for a year. I wanted to be a doctor. But, well, we don't have as much money as my mother pretends. Dad said he could manage if that's what I really wanted, but my mother said it was too difficult for a woman to get into medical school. Why was she gabbing like this? I want to be a writer, Theo said. That really sounded like a kid stuff. Well, would you go back to college if you won the inheritance, Angela? Angela looked down. It was a question she did not want to answer, or could not answer. So there's a lot going on there. We learned that Grace has expectations or sees limits for girls that she doesn't see for boys about becoming a doctor. And Theo wants to be a writer, but he doesn't really see it as a career. So they both have dreams that haven't been fulfilled yet, kind of like the Dream Deferred poem that we read. Now, next table, J.J. Ford. Long before becoming a judge, Josie Joe Ford had decided to stop smiling. Smiling without good reason was demeaning. A serious face put the smiler on the defense, and a rare smile put a nervous witness at ease. She now bestowed one of her rare smiles on the dressmaker. I'm so glad we have this chance to become acquainted, Mrs. Baumbach. I've had so little time to chat with my guest last night. It was a wonderful party. Flora Baumbach appeared even smaller and even rounder than she was, as she sat twisting her napkin with her hands, accustomed to being busy. Was her face permanently creased from years of pleasing customers? Or was there a tragedy lurking behind that grin? Have you always specialized in wedding gowns? So I'm wondering what the tragedy is with Mrs. Baumbach, right? She smiles all the time, but she's probably covering something up. And we're about to learn a little more. Mr. Baumbach and I had a shop for many years. Baumbach's for the bride and groom. Perhaps you've heard of it? I'm afraid of not. The judge would have said no in any case to keep her witness talking. Perhaps you've heard of Flora's bridal gowns. That's what I called my shop after my husband left. I don't know much about groom's clothes. They're mostly rentals anyway. Flora Baumbach lost her timidity. The judge let her chat away. I'm using heirloom lace on the bodice of Angela's gown. It's been in my family for 3 generations. I wore it at my wedding, and I dreamed that someday I'd have a daughter who would wear it too. But Rosalie didn't come along until I was in my 40s, and... The dressmaker stopped. Her lips tightened into an even wider grin. Angela will make such a beautiful bride. Funny how she reminds me of her. Angela reminds you of your own daughter? The judge asked. Oh, my no. Angela reminds me of another young girl I made a wedding dress for. Violet Westing. The heavy charms on Seidel's bracelet clinked and clunked as she raised a full fork and flourished it in a practice ritual before aiming it at her open mouth. Chris's movements were even jerkier. She's a good person, he thought, but she thinks too much about herself. Maybe she's never had anyone to love. Here, let me help you with some of this delicious sweet and sour ostrich. Their laughter drowned out a loud groan from another table where Turtle sat alone, a radio plugged into her ear. The stock market had dropped another 12 points. I'm starved. Let's sit down to eat. Head held high, Grace Wexler led her husband across the restaurant. All I want is corned beef sandwich, not a guided tour. Would you prefer to sit alone or with that young lady over there? I thought I was going to sit with you. Please be seated, Grace replied to her husband. Mr. Hu will take your order shortly. Jake snatched the menu from his wife and watched her glide. Gracefully, he had to admit. to the reservation's desk and whisper in Mr. Who's ear. Jimmy, she called him. Ugh, that's a fine kettle of fish, he exclaimed, then turned to his dinner companion. Fine kettle of fish. I'm so hungry, even that sounds good. And from the looks of this menu, that's probably what I'll get. I'm okay, Turtle replied. The final prices of actively traded stocks rumbled in her ear. Mr. Who waddled over. I'm recommending the striped bass. See, what did I tell you? A kettle of fish. Turtle switched off the radio. She'd heard enough bad news for one day. So Turtle gets to sit with her dad. How about the spare ribs done to a crisp? Who suggested. Then he lowered his voice. What's the point spread on the Packers game? See me later, Jake muttered. Oh, go ahead and tell him, Daddy, Turtle said. I know you're a bookie. So there we go. And Mr. Who is a customer of the bookie. Okay, back to Seidel and Chris. Can you stand on your legs? Seidel asked. Can you walk at all? People never asked Chris those questions. They whispered them to his parents behind his back. No. Why? Well, what better disguise for a thief or a murderer than a wheelchair? The perfect alibi. Chris enjoyed being taken for the criminal type. Now they really were friends. When you read me notes. What? Oh, read you my notes? Soon, very soon. Seidel daintily touched the corners of her mouth with a napkin, pushed back her chair, and grabbed her polka-dotted crutch. That was a superb meal. I must give my compliments to the chef. She rose, knocking the chair to the floor, and then clumped toward the kitchen door. Where's she going? Angela started up to help her partner, but was distracted by shouting in the corridor. Hello in there! Anybody home? Through the restaurant door came a bundled and booted figure. He danced an elefante, I don't even know that word, jig, stomping snow on the carpet, flung a long woolen scarf from his neck, and yelled, Otis Amber is here! The roads are clear! That's when the bomb went off. Nobody move! Everybody stay where you are! Mr. Who shouted as he rushed into the sizzling, crackling kitchen. Just a little mishap, Grace Wexler exclaimed, taking her command post in the middle of the restaurant. Nothing to worry about. Eat up your food before it gets cold. A cluster of red sparks hissed through the swinging kitchen door, kissed the ceiling, and rained a shimmering shower down and around the petrified hostess. So it's like sparking all over Grace. Fireflies of color faded into her honey blonde hair and scattered into ash at her feet. Nothing to worry about, she repeated hoarsely. Just celebrating the Chinese New Year, Otis Amber shouted, adding one of his cackles. Mr. Who leaned through the kitchen doorway, his shiny, straight black hair, even shinier and straighter, plastered to his forehead, water dribbling down his face. Call an ambulance. There's been a slight accident. Angela dashed past Mr. Who into the kitchen. Jake Wexler made the emergency phone call and sent Theo to the lobby to direct the ambulance attendants. Why are you just standing there like a statue? Who shouted at his son. You told everybody to stay where you are, Doug said. You're not everybody. Madam Who tried to make the injured woman as comfortable as possible. So who is the injured woman? On the debris-strewn floor, Angela found the sequin spectacles. Who wears sequin spectacles? Wiped off the wet, crystalline mess and placed them on her partner's nose. All right, so it's Seidel. Seidel got actually hurt. Oh, don't look so worried, Angela. I'm all right. Seidel was in pain, but she wanted the attention on her own terms, not as a hapless, foolish victim of fate. Looks like a fracture, the ambulance attendant said, feeling her right ankle. Careful how you lift her. The secretary suppressed a grunt. It was bad enough being drenched by the overhead sprinkler and draped with noodles. Now they were carrying her right past everybody. Grace pulled Angela away from the stretcher. Well, you can visit your friend in a few days. Angela, Seidel moaned. Pride or not, she wanted her partner at her side. Angela stood between her determined mother and her distraught partner, paralyzed by the burden of choice. Go with your friend, Angie Pie, Jake Wexler said. Other voices chimed in. Go with Pulaski. Go. Grace realized she had lost. Well, perhaps you should go to the hospital, Angela. It's been so long since you've seen your Dr. D. She winked mischievously, but only Flora Bomback smiled back. The police and the fire inspector visiting the scene agreed that it was nothing more than a gas explosion. Good thing the sprinkler system worked on Mr. Who, or Mr. Who might have had a good fire. What kind of fire is a good fire? Mr. Who wanted to know. And what about the burglaries? Grace Wexler asked. I'm with the bomb squad, the police explained. You'll have to call the robbery detail for that. And what about the coffee shop accident? Theo asked. Also a gas explosion. Jake Wexler asked about the odds of having 2 explosions in 2 days in the same building. Nothing unusual, the fireman replied, especially in weather like this. No ventilation, snow packed over the ducts. He instructed the tenants to air out their kitchens before lighting any ovens. Mrs. Wexler turned up the heat in her apartment that day and kept the windows open for the next 3 days. She did not want anything blowing up during Angela's party. But the Wexler apartment was exactly where the bomber planned to set the next bomb. Dun dun dun. And the next bomb is the last bomb. But this one doesn't go quite as planned for the bomber.